Hello and welcome to Hare and the Hawthorn. My name's Kate Ray. We're back with a new episode, just me and Neil. Hello, Neil. For
Hello,
this
Kate.
one, we have got a bulk of things that we're going to get through in the meat of today's episode of all things fairy. But I want to start off with blithering for a little while, as Neil quite likes to put it. And the big thing is Hare and the Hawthorn is 4 years old this month. July 2024. And like a lot of people during the time of lockdown, I started to podcast just to reach out to people, just to have that kind of social aspect and to to socialize, I think. And it's grown, it's definitely grown. I look back at the very early interviews and think how utterly rubbish I was and how utterly nervous I was. I literally used to list huge amounts of questions and not listen to what people were saying because I was so nervous about the next question and where to fit it in. And now I'm not professional at all. And not only am I not professional, but I've got a Neil with me.
Yeah.
So we were just talking about when Neil joined Hare in the Hawthorn, which was 2 years ago, literally. We were looking back over the videos and we kind of think it was summertime, don't we, Neil? We don't.
Yeah, around about this time of year. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got Neil on board, and what did you say to me before, Neil, about when I said, "How have you put up with me for this long?"
Well, yeah, I don't know how I've put up with you, and I don't know how you put up with me, to be honest. It's just, but I think it works, doesn't it? I mean, people seem to appreciate it. We kind of kick off against each other quite nicely without getting into big arguments or anything. It's
Not on this side of things. We don't.
not while we're recording, anyway.
No, no, no.
Um,
Very, very professional.
but yeah, and like I said to you before, my first time co-hosting 2 years ago was with Dr. David Luke. When it was absolutely fantastic. Might have to get him back on at some point, I think.
Definitely.
And that was a mind blower. Talking about psychedelics and fairies and the research he's doing at Greenwich University. So yeah, no, that was great. And thinking back over the 2 years about how many great guests we've had on. Some of them just once, some returning guests, and really top quality guests. It's a relatively small channel, compared to some of the really big channels out there. So to attract those type of people like Joshua Cutchin, David Halpin, Thomas Sheridan, Anthony Peake, David Luke, amongst others. Sorry for those who've left out, but attracting that quality of guest has been absolutely fabulous. I think
That absolutely stuns me every single time. I don't think I've had anybody say no to coming on the show, and I get absolutely blown away by the generosity of people giving up their time to come on and talk to us and to impart their knowledge and doing it completely freely. And one of the things about the guests that we've had on, and all of the guests that we've had on, they've been such easy guests. It's almost like, we're stage setting for them, which is wonderful because we get to enjoy the experience of listening to this sort of wealth of knowledge
yeah,
and depth of knowledge as well. So it's we are our guests. I think we are our guests and our viewers. Definitely, I think that's what makes up Hare in the Hawthorn. And like you say, we are a very, very humble, very, very humble platform, and we still enjoy doing it.
yep.
And on that note, okay, I have toed and froed with this for a very long time, and very briefly I monetized this channel. It was only very, very briefly where I got YouTube to put ads in between what we were talking about, and that fell through. I mean, for those who regularly watch know how utterly crap I am with technology, and that kind of side of things fell through, which I wasn't that particularly bothered about, because when I'm watching something, if I get interrupted with adverts, I get freaked out. I'm like, I'm off track. I it bolts me out of what I'm watching. But we have been asked, or I've certainly been asked by different viewers, if there's a way that they can help support us with this. And I came across a nice website that I know that other people who I respect use as well, which is ko-fi.com, which is a site where you can buy us a cup of coffee and just to show your support and appreciation. And what I've done with that is I've set it to the lowest denominator in pounds. So, but you know, if you would like to show your support, we would really, really appreciate that. And I am going to endeavour to drop it in the comments below. I'll put it in the strap line of how you can find that. But we've had a few people supporting us so far, and we really do appreciate it. It's it doesn't just go for what's in Neil's goblet and, you know, my that sounds wrong, and my cup of herbal tea, but it also goes things like Zoom. So putting together the Zoom package is something that comes out of our pocket, so it'd be nice to have contributions towards that. So thank you for that. And that's my cap in hand begging
Yeah.
bowl
No,
bit over. It sits really funny with me, this kind of thing, but I have been having chats with lots of people, and they've been like, it's perfectly normal to do this.
it does seem so these days. And I get what you mean about, I mean, everything we do really is free. And I kind of like that
Yes.
aspect of it. You know, we're not asking you to join this and or pay per view or like you say, monetized videos with lots of adverts. So there's that, but things like the Zoom package, you know, it costs quite a lot of money.
Mhm.
And I don't know, some viewers will remember for a while back, we had to have the free package, which limits you to 40 minutes. And we were trying to cram interviews into 40 minutes, and it doesn't work
Mm-mm.
because you'll have a guest who's just getting going. And I especially remember the Anthony Peake
I know.
one where he could have gone on for another couple of hours. He was just getting into full steam, and Kate was like, right, sorry, that's it, bye.
Time out. Off you go. No,
Which
I
is
I
not
didn't
great.
I didn't like that at all. And that was at a point when we were poor as church mice, and we still wanted to run ahead with things, but it felt really rude to guests. And it felt rushed for us as well. And we could have done things in two parts, but I've found in the past that two parts of an episode just don't work. So anyway, that's the kind of update of the news. So happy birthday, Hare and the Hawthorn. I'm not going to do what I did in my first year, got all excited, went out in the garden, a little lit a sparkler, because nobody actually watched it, and I'd spent quite a bit of time using my GoPro. I had a GoPro at the time. Don't ask me how I used it. I've got no idea nowadays. So what we're going to do as part of in between guests and in between sort of specific new fairy news stories that come out that we're going to be looking at, Neil had the ingenious idea of us looking through the fairy census, both 1 and 2, and Neil will explain what that is in a minute, and picking out different experiences and then picking them apart and having a look and examining them and giving our thoughts and feelings on what we think may be going on in those experiences. So, Neil, do you just want to explain to viewers who might not know what the fairy census is?
Yeah, sure. I think most people watching this will know what the fairy census is, but very briefly, the first one was put together in 2017 by our good friend Dr. Simon Young of the Fairy Investigation Society.
And happy birthday, Simon, because it's his birthday today.
It is his birthday today, yes. Yeah, I believe he's 30 again.
21, I heard. I heard he was 21.
So Simon decided, you know, when he became the secretary of the Fairy Investigation Society in, I don't know when that would have been, 2009, 2010, something like that. And one of the things he wanted to do was get a census together of modern experiences. And so that's what he did. And that first fairy census ran between 2014 and 17 and collated around about 500 experience reports that people saw as fairy experiences. And there's a wide diversity of this, as we're always talking about on the channel. The fairies come in many guises, and that census show exactly how many guises they come in and how people interpret their idea of fairies. And they were from all over the world. the majority were from Great Britain and Ireland, but there's plenty from the US, Canada, Australia, mostly English-speaking
Mm.
countries, which isn't that surprising in terms of those are the people who would have seen the census.
Mm.
So how the census works is that Simon has put together a form asking questions about the person who's doing the report, the age, when the experience happened, and then a description of the experience. And then also, really interestingly, I find basically the question is, what do you think fairies are?
Mm.
And again, there was a wide disparity of answers to that in both the first and the second census. And the thing that stands out to me is how many people relate them as nature spirits.
Yes.
That's definitely, probably more than any other fairy type.
Mhm.
So so Simon continued to get reports being sent into him, and a few years ago he decided, right, we need a second report census. And once he had received, again, about 500 reports, he put the census together. Slight difference in the format, but not much. It's more or less part two
Mhm.
of the first fairy census, and that came out at the end of last year,
Mhm.
2023. And what are the differences? I know I've been saying this for the last few podcasts, but I'm writing an article at the moment about
Just so happens.
and it's everything takes me ages to write these days. I've become a very slow writer, but it is putting together. Some of the themes seem to have changed. There's still a preponderance of people saying, "What are they? Nature spirits,"
Mhm.
but also there's more people saying things like interdimensional beings,
Yes.
or intraterrestrials,
Mhm.
and this kind of slightly more modern, updated language that people are using. And in the second census, you do find that the descriptions are, on the whole, not all of them, but on the whole, they're longer. People are finding it more comfortable to write proper descriptive
Mhm.
articles about their experiences. And the other thing, in the first census, they're all modern
Yeah.
experiences, but there were quite a lot from the 60s, 70s, end of the 20th century, and there still are some in the second census, but there's much more from the last 20 years
Yeah.
or so. So that again tells me that people are a little bit more comfortable when you put something 40 years in the past. I'm not saying they don't have a proper memory of it. I'm saying that it's kind of, oh, that's in the past,
Mm.
and it's not me now.
Mm. They can
Where
disassociate from it, can't they?
exactly,
Mm.
and whereas this second census has many more from, say, well, the 21st century,
Mhm.
and so that's very interesting as well. So that's the fairy census, and we once again we have to take our hats off to Dr. Simon Young for the massive amount of work that he puts into collating these and then putting an introduction in and formatting everything, and it then makes it available for free. You can
Yeah.
go onto the Fairy Investigation Society. You can download in PDF form both of the fairy censuses, and you've got to admire the guy for doing that, because he could have easily retained that and just published it
Mm.
or made it a payable
Mm.
aspect on the site, and he hasn't done that. So these are freely available for anyone to go and investigate them. And so thank you, Simon.
Yeah, and you can buy it in book form on Amazon.
Yeah,
It is available on there. So if you do want to support him and support the work that he's doing, then I'm sure that that is something that will add to that. If nothing else, it gives him an idea of the interest and how many people are engaging within this work. And I know that talking to other people from the Fairy Investigation Society and outside that within the paranormal community, it's an absolutely brilliant tool to use in various different ways. And not only that, but it's a fascinating read. So even if you're not using it for conferences or for writing and research on the subject, it's a lovely read. So just sitting down and having to flick through, it's almost like a take a break. You can sit down for 5 minutes and flick through and find out what fairy experiences people are having. I think the interesting thing is about the new census, and it has got a broader outreach, like you say, from Great Britain, is that there are huge similarities across the board within America, New Zealand, etc. You know, there are huge similarities with the kind of experiences that people have, which is interesting to see. Yeah, it's a good body of work. It is a good body of work.
It is, and I should just add that there's an extra. This is for the second census only, I think. And I'm afraid I've forgot. I can't have I can't get the name of the chap who put this together, but it's with Simon's permission, and it's just called fairycensus.com. And whoever's put this together has thematized everything in the second census and made it all searchable by keywords in a database, and it's a very useful tool. So you could put in nature spirits, and it will come up with all the instances of nature spirits in a kind of nice thematized, easy to use format. And so go, what's the name? Sorry, make sure I get this. So it's just fairycensus.com, and that's a very useful addition to helping people who really want to investigate the census.
That excites me, and it drops my stomach a bit. That so it excites me because I think that's brilliant. It's a great tool to access for this. But the other thing is, I really like being a nerd and going through the census, and I'll show you going through the census with a highlighter and my little notes, and I write little notes and little pencil marks, and that excites me. I'm quite old school. I like the material.
Oh, it's just about what I was going to say. Old school, that is, Kate.
Yeah, definitely.
Little bookmarks. You know, you don't need a database. Who needs that?
But the thing is with the database is that you could put in the word gnomes and it would come up with all the references that were made to gnomes. However, there may be gnome-like characters that cross over that don't use the word gnome within the census. And unless you're reading it and go, oh, that sounds like more of a gnome encounter or more of a pixie encounter, but doesn't use that terminology. So you kind of...
Yep.
It's a great starting point, but I am old school. You know, I think we went to university when the time was when we didn't have the internet, and we had to use the library, and this is what we did.
Listen to you. You were lucky.
You were lucky to have the
internet. Yeah, no, there's no substitute for just picking up, for me, the hard copy. I love the hard copy and just sort of reading through a few when you feel like it. That's the best thing. That's the best thing to do. But when when you're writing an article about a database, it can be a useful tool.
Yeah, it is genius. It is genius. Just picking the pit holes out there. Picking the pit holes. Whatever I'm saying, I'm going to shut up. You know what I mean. You know what I mean. I'm picking it because there is pitfalls in it, isn't there? Not pit holes, pitfalls.
Yeah.
In that. Anyway, let's stop blithering on about the academics of it. Right. So we've both picked a story out the census at random-ish, and one that we haven't told each other about which one that we have picked out. And I think we've both chosen them for specific personal reasons or specific reasons. And then we're going to have a look into it. It'd be really nice to find out from viewers as well about what your thoughts are about these particular ones that we've picked out. We'll be doing this sporadically, I think, over the year, when we haven't got a guest, or in between guests, we'll sit and do this. So
yeah, and do remember the last two interviews we've done with Joshua and David, we did introduce a report for them to comment on them.
Yes.
Sort of jumped them with that a little bit because didn't tell them we were going to do it. But I think both their reactions were very, very, very useful. And I think it's just a good thing to do. This is such a great resource
Mhm.
that we, doing what we do,
We're not getting paid by Simon to say all this, by the way. This is genuinely coming from us. This is not like,
that's right.
and sponsored by Simon Young.
Although if Simon
Ooh.
wants to sponsor us, he's more than welcome to do so. Right, so I'll go first then, shall I?
Mhm.
Right. So this is from the second census. And this one, if I can pull it up, if I can see it. Sorry if this is, my glasses are reflecting with the with the white. But so this isn't very long one. I was saying before, people have written at length, sometimes goes on for 2 or 3 pages. This isn't one of those. This is a slightly shorter one, but it's very interesting, and I'll say why I think it's very interesting after I've just read out the entry. It's
Mhm.
number 575 from Somerset, England, and so each entry has a little like forward describing who's giving the report, when it was, what age they were, what time of day, etc., etc. So that part of it is it's a male, and this took part in the 1970s when he was a teenager. He's in open lands, fields, etc., on my own. It happened during the daytime, no duration given, no fairy mood given, a regular supernatural experience, no special state reported, but a loss of sense of time, hair prickling or tingling before or during the experience, and a sense that the experience marked a turning point in your life. That's another uh, this happens time and time again in the census. People say this event, this experience changed my life, and sure enough, this report is the same. So this is the report in the person who's reporting. The other thing I should have added is that all of these reports are anonymous, so you never know who is actually giving these reports, apart from
Let's call him Dave. Let's give him
Dave. Dave.
names.
No, I'm not calling him
Dave.
Dave. Dave, just in case it is Dave. So all we know is a teenager in the 1970s. And I especially like the first line. I was bunking off from school.
Always a good start.
and sitting in a field bordered by woods. I knew these fields like the back of my hand. I had a sketch pad and was busy drawing. Looking up into what should have been a sloping open field, it was now full of very small apple trees, and a strange mist around the trees, and eventually me. I got spooked and scrambled back up the field to the main road and went home, a bit shaken up. Returning the following Saturday with friends I told this experience to, the field was as it always is, just a field, no sign of the orchard. What I hadn't told my friends about was the strange compulsion I had experienced, wanting to eat the apples from these trees, and the faint music I heard. I believe I had been in a fairy orchard, and God knows what might have happened had I eaten any of the fruit. The music was twinkle-like, flute and strings. I think this experience opened something up within me and has made it easier for me to have these type of paranormal, supernatural experiences. And that's
It's a good one. There is many things in that one. Many things.
that is interesting, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
now the first thing people will say is that well, this is from the 1970s. How can that person possibly remember that? Well, teenager bunking off from school. He didn't say anything about smoking dope, but
I didn't say anything about smoking dope.
um, but I think ex extraordinary experiences lodge themselves in your memory, and you're able to access them in more high resolution
Mhm.
than ordinary mundane
Yes.
memories. That's definitely the case for me. People know about my experience in West Kennet Longbarrow,
Yeah.
and although I actually wrote that down in the journal at the time, which was helpful, the memory of it is exquisite.
It doesn't go
It's
away, and the details
no,
don't go away either from that kind of thing.
that's right. Whereas it's how I mean, say I've been at hundreds of cricket matches. I can hardly remember anything about them.
Mhm.
It's just sort of dull, misty memory. There's no high resolution in it.
Mm,
So that's the first thing I want to say about that is, okay, it's the 1970s, but this, it's obviously meant a lot to this person,
mm,
as they pointed out. Now, the second thing to say about it is that there is a creepy quality to
mm,
it. I mean, all you have to do is imagine yourself in a landscape, and then the next second that landscape has changed into something else.
mm-hmm,
What would you do? Um, that aspect of it is very, very interesting
mm,
and very fairy-like.
mm-hmm,
Basically, he seems, for whatever reason, to have gone into part of reality that is slightly different than the everyday
mm-hmm.
reality. And you just, I mean, it's a very brief description, and I would really like to know what his state of consciousness was at the time. If he's he's bunking off from school, so there's a little bit of friction of tension there.
But if he's
Um,
drawing, he's going to be in a very
uh,
hypnotic mind state, isn't he?
exactly,
Because
absolutely,
when
exactly,
you're creating art, your brain completely shifts into almost a meditative state when you're doing that, and time is just something that goes really bizarre when you're drawing or painting. Up and
exactly.
up until the point where I actually read that one a couple of days ago. I'd got up to the Somerset ones that I was reading through. And up until the point where he said that he felt like he really wanted to eat an apple, and an apple's very significant for two reasons: A, because it's Somerset, and two, because it's forbidden fruit, it's taboo. Up until that point, my first thought was, this is time slip.
Mm,
So he's in a place that are known for their orchards, known, Somerset's absolutely famous for its apples. Is it a time slip? Is he seeing something from the past? That field was once an ancient apple orchard, and he's just time slipping. But when he says about he felt like he really wanted to have an apple, that to me went ding, 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 fairy motif. We've got that fruit
mhm.
that is tempting, that is a temptation to eat.
Uh,
Um, can I just
yeah, go on.
go on? No, 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 go on, because I've got another chunk that I want to add to that.
All right. Well, that is, like you say, it's an extremely, perhaps one of the most common motifs in fairy folklore, is that if you find yourself in any kind of fairy environment, don't eat anything.
Yes.
And it's often apples, not always apples, but don't eat anything, because otherwise you're going to have to stay there.
Yeah.
And I've always thought myself is, I quite like to stay there. Thank you very much.
Exactly. Yeah.
Although of course in many of the stories,
You dance to
from
death.
folklore,
Yeah.
well, either that or you end up as being their servant.
Yeah, servant. I wouldn't mind dancing myself to death or being dropped
Yeah,
back into this reality and then turning into dust.
yeah.
The moment
So
that you hit the floor is not something that I would relish
yeah.
really.
So there's that about a very common motif. And even if this guy is not particularly aware of the folklore, subconsciously he probably is. Even
Mhm.
if you're talking about a collective unconscious informing him, he knows that however tempted you are, you don't do it,
No.
because otherwise you're going to have to stay there. So there's that. So go on.
So I mean, just on the back of what you just said there, I mean, I always see Somerset as the gateway to the last kind of stronghold of the fairy folk within the UK. You know, you've got Somerset, Devon, Cornwall, and apart from Ireland and Scotland, that seems to me like really the last stronghold for
Mhm.
for that tradition to really resonate through the community. So I think he would have definitely have had, the cultural flickerings in the back of his mind about that. The interesting thing is, I sent Neil a few days ago. I for about 3 years now have been watching a guy, and most of you will have come across him. His name's Mr. Balin, and he uh, recounts stories of strange phenomena. And I will put a warning on there. He also does things about serial killers and about strange deaths and that kind of thing. So he does delve into the darker side. But there are a lot of things that he talks about, and he literally presents a story. He presents, and he's very good. He's very much a modern bard. And today, in fact, three very similar stories to the one that we're examining at the minute. was three children who had gone missing, separate cases. And when they were found unscathed. They hadn't lost any weight. I mean, one of them, I think she was missing for 6 days. She was found 30 miles away from the original location. And none of them could explain what had happened initially. They had massive chunks of memory missing. And the interesting thing was that they all had said, and these were separate cases over about a 50-year period, but in totally different places in America. The theme was that they said that they had wandered from where they were. So they were with their parents picnicking, or they were walking with their grandparents. They'd wandered a little way and were faced with a scene that was nothing like where they had just been. So their ages were sort of 6 to probably 12, ranging. And one of them said that they had been walking on a country track, fields either side of them. They had turned to face one of the fields, and the field wasn't there anymore, and it was thick woodland, and they got frightened and didn't know where they were, so ran. And this seems to be, I have come across this quite a few times and these are documented cases, and I'm going to start sending you them, Neil. I do apologize, because these are things that I'm coming across and thinking this is definitely got that essence.
Oh, definitely. Well, you did send me one about
I did.
the little boy who he didn't have missing memory. He had kind of false memories
Yes.
of. We won't go into detail about it. But it's a very similar kind of ambience to the report that I've just read out, whereby someone is suddenly within a different landscape. And there seems something ethereal about that landscape and something not quite right. And then they come back out of it with or without the memories of those landscapes. And of course, as you say, it's very fairy-like. And a lot of people will also say, well, it's also very much like alien abduction like, although the alien abductions tend to be these days more frightening than fairy experiences, not always. But so that comes back again to what we often say about is the phenomenon, all of these different phenomena, are they actually all coming from the same place? Are aliens and fairies the same thing, but just how we process it through our own individual consciousness? That's a big question, too big to go into any detail here. But that report, just to finish off before you do yours, Kate, because otherwise we're going to go over time. And remember, there's something very important to do at the end of this video. Can't forget that. The other thing that we've talked about again in our last couple of interviews is the fact that fairy music was involved. He heard, the usual, the pipes
tinkling.
and the tinkling. He even describes it as tinkling. And again, we've gone over this the last couple of times, but again, it's very interesting. There are many other examples in the census, both the first census and the second census, of people either having visual experiences with the fairies and hearing music, or sometimes, as in this report, and remember, he didn't see any fairies, he just associated it with a fairy ambience, and sure enough, there was the music to just enhance that feeling of otherworldliness about it. So that's another interesting part of this report.
And that Mr. Bailey one that I sent you, the boy had felt like he'd only been gone overnight. He was gone for days. Yep. And the search party, when they found him, said that when they tracked back to where he thought he had been, they had been hearing drumming coming from that area. And when they found him, the drumming stopped, but they could never find the drumming. Every time they went sort of to where they thought it was, it would shift and it would move around. So there's that other motif in there. It's and I find it interesting that Mr. Bailey, although will allude to cryptozoology or allude to alien abduction, I don't think I've ever heard him talk about fairy motifs, which is interesting. So again, no sponsorship, go and check out Mr. Bailey. I really love his work. He's very, very easy to listen to. When I'm making mushrooms, I usually listen to serial killer stuff, which is good. So
we should get him on the show if we can, see if we can.
Yeah, that'd be
Be good.
Yeah, that would be. I was talking about getting people on the show. Somebody suggested Jack Valet to get, and I'm like, that would just be that would be the holy grail. Holy grail. I wouldn't even know where to track him down. So if anybody knows him, like you do,
Like you too, yeah, yeah.
like you do, or
It
anybody,
it might be a bit of a come down from his appearance on the Joe Rogan show, but you know,
never,
whatever.
never. We are on par with Joe Rogan.
I'm not talking about quality. I'm talking about sort of high profile. You know, it's yeah.
We don't need the high profile. He'll love us. Anyway, if anybody does know him, yeah, please do. Oh, and there was somebody else. I've just got to mention this while we're mentioning what people's comments are. And we do read all the comments. I actually, I think I responded to this one. It was one of those very rare moments when technology was working for me. But it was one of my very old posts about Erwin Saunders. And somebody had obviously picked it up thinking it was a new post and said, you're always talking about fairies. This is the line of it, or how I took it. You're always talking about fairies. Why don't you get in the field and go out fairy hunting, if you like? And it crackled my back a little bit for a second or two, and then I was like, yeah, that because I would love to. That is my response. I would love to be a female Erwin Saunders. That is just my dream job. Okay. Haven't got the experience with video, cinematography or videoing or editing or anything like that. So if anybody wants to produce a program of, I'll put a beard on. I'll put an Erwin beard on. There you go. That's my response.
The mind boggles, Kate. Right. So
Anyway,
what census report have we got from you? This is because as Kate said, we didn't tell each other which one we were going to do. So this is a nice surprise. But go on, off you go.
So I've taken mine from census number 1, the first one out, and this is the census that I've used the most, and I'll explain why when I get to the end of it. And this one is 159. It takes place in Ireland. It's a female, and it's the early 2010s. She says that it was between 3 and 6 o'clock. It happened between 2 and 10 minutes, which timing's always funny, isn't it, with these events, which is one thing I want to have a think about. She said that she felt aloof, which is good, sort of disconnected from the situation. She was in no special state of mind, and she has an unusually vivid memory of the experience, which is something that people, as we've said, often say. Yeah. So she says, coming home along an empty road in daylight in springtime, my husband is driving. I was in the passenger seat. We came across a bridge over the river, and we came to a gentle bend in the road. Our turn-off was to the right, and it was in the distance. About 5 yards away on the side of the road was a woman, and she was walking. She was about 4 or 5 feet tall, short dark hair with her back to me. She wore a fitted black jacket and full black skirt with a red design around the hem. I saw her very clearly as it was daylight, but she didn't stop or turn around as we approached. She didn't wave or put up her hand, which is a usual practice in the Irish countryside. So cars passing, you go, thanks for slowing down. We passed her, but I didn't look back at her. She was so real, I asked my husband why he didn't indicate and pull out to give her more room. He hadn't seen her at all. I was so sure that I'd seen her that we turned the car around and returned to the same spot. We got out, no sign of her, no house anywhere that she'd gone, nothing. There have been other experiences here, but this was the most recent and the clearest. So, why do you think I've picked that one?
Well, for a start, was that the end of the report, or did she say why she thought it was a fairy?
Let me have a quick look. No, I don't know for sure it was a fairy experience, is what she's put. But within Ireland, this is what I find particularly interesting. Within Ireland, like the Isle of Man, there is a almost seamless tapestry for people where cryptids, fairies, and spirits of the dead, angelics, demonics, all sit very tightly within that tapestry. and pulling them apart is something that separating them is something that often isn't done. And I think I've spoke before, I love the fact that in the Isle of Man the word spook refers to all those things. So we call spook in the UK a ghost, an apparition, but in these places a spook is referring to something that's creepy, something that's otherworldly, or something that just is just not of this world.
Yes, and also in Ireland, as per the report we looked at with David about the musician, the old man coming into the
Yeah.
to the party, uh, especially in Ireland, the fairies tend to be more human-like.
Mm-hmm.
They tend to be taller. Think about the gentry in
Mm-hmm.
Ireland; they're indistinguishable from humans. They're just the gentry. They just have
Mm-hmm.
supernatural abilities. And this is certainly the case here. Okay, so she's short. 4 feet is a short person, but it could be a person. But the person also has that kind of mysterious, I wouldn't say particularly creepy in this instance, but sort of mysterious ambience about them.
Mm-hmm.
They're human. Are they human? Are they not human? Whereas certainly in the British, in the English, um, especially the English examples, coming back again, fairies tend to be smaller nature spirits, obviously
Mm-hmm.
um, frequently described as nature spirits, and whilst humanoid, not mistakable for
Yeah.
humans. Whereas in Ireland, in this particular case, it's the woman was looking at her thinking that's a human, but afterwards she's obviously interpreted it as a fairy type entity. And also interesting in this case is the fact that only she saw it.
Mm-hmm.
The husband didn't see it, and surely uh, if you go past someone, the husband should have seen it. So that's
I'm not going to
another.
make a derogatory comment about men and driving. I'm going to refrain from
Well,
that.
he was concentrating on the road, wasn't he? He was,
Exactly, exactly.
and it's but it does suggest that perhaps she was, for whatever reason, she doesn't describe it there, but perhaps her state of consciousness was altered in some ways, whereas his was more unaltered, mechanical, driving on the road.
Mm.
So she experienced it because she was in a slightly altered state of consciousness, and he wasn't. Um, it's an interesting one. What more have you got to say about it?
So for me, I scour my first overarching research when I'm going through the census is I scour the books for incidents where I think that they are more akin to paranormal than fairy. And I know paranormal covers fairy, but more akin to sort of ghosting, haunting, apparition, that kind of thing. These are stories that I would more often than not hear during conversations with people about haunting experiences. Now, this for me is an atypical woman in black. You know, she's got a fitted jacket on, a black jacket, a
Black
long,
hair.
yeah, black hair, long black dress, which is it is that atypical woman in black. And for me, this was a brilliant story to show how the meshing of ideas between the fairies, the spirits of the dead are becoming more apparent in our consciousness. Because, you know, 5 years ago, that wouldn't have made, I don't think, well, it's got to have made it in because it was about 5 years ago now, wasn't it? But I don't think that that's something that I would have considered a fairy experience. And it would be intriguing to find out why she felt that it was
Hmm.
particularly a fairy and not the spirit of the dead, or not something. I suppose if she's seen it like a banshee, because banshees herald death, and if
Yep.
she's seen it along the same lines as a banshee type character, and we know that the banshee of the Shay, which is from the fairy world. I just find it intriguing when these
Yeah.
stories come out and people say, "Oh yeah, it was fairy."
Yeah, very much so. As you say, it's unfortunate that it's the same with all the reports. Sometimes people say why they think it's a fairy, what fairies are. Sometimes they just don't enter that field in the form. So in that case, it would be really interesting to know why are you identifying this as a fairy? Maybe, maybe that she's had other experiences and she attaches that as a fairy experience. Maybe she's aware of some of the folklore in that part of the country, and it's it's the fairies.
And
So
it's
so
interesting as well that they've come over a body of water.
that was
So,
the last thing I was going to say. It's yeah, that threshold that
mm,
of a body of water, so often if you cross it and then boom, things change.
I mean, there are many stories attached to old bridges, especially with hauntings. I mean, there's that. I can never remember where it is. There's the famous bridge up in Scotland where dogs jump to the death,
Mm,
and that still occurs, and nobody can figure out what it is. They've tried all kinds of tests of
mm,
whether it smells or
yeah.
electromagnetics or whatever it is that. But dogs hurl them. It's crazy fascinating.
Yeah, and of course there's the Fairy Bridge on the Isle of Man, where there have been many sightings from, and
Yes.
I read there's a nice one in the first census about a guy, an English guy who's there on a business trip or something. He's in a taxi, and they're going over the ferry bridge, and the taxi driver says you need to wave to the fairies,
Yes.
and he's like okay, and as they're coming up, one of a sort of small gnomish like creature runs across the road, and they both see it. Both
Mm-hmm.
the taxi driver and the guy see it on the ferry bridge in on the Isle of Man. That's probably the most famous
And I
bridge
shan't.
over water associated with fairies.
I know how you feel about this, but that is quite often referenced when people have researched Jeff the Mongoose.
Oh no, I forgot about Jeff the Mongoose.
You cannot forget. We're going to do a whole episode on Jeff.
Yeah, I'm going to be
Me
busy
and
that
you.
day. I'm
No,
going to be
you
busy that
no
day.
no no no.
Actually,
You're
yeah.
not. I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to tell you we're going to be doing on, I don't know, fairy marriage or something like that, and entice you in, and then I'm going to say, right, we're talking about Jeff the Mongoose. For those who don't know, I am a big fan of Jeff the Mongoose, like massive. It is my all time favorite fairy, spooky, whatever story, all time favorite. Neil hates it. Great.
I don't hate it. I just don't find it very interesting, to be
Can
honest.
you not find it interesting? Honestly, I'm going to post you two books, and by the end of it, if you're not saying that this is the magnitude of this story, the magnitude of research into this story, the magnitude of people involved in this story, you are going to be hooked. We're going to be wearing Jeff the Mongoose t-shirts by the end of it.
My internet connection's going down, Kate. Something's going.
Can anybody out there who's watching this and wants to see us do Jeff the Mongoose,
Oh.
just drop a comment below and
Yeah.
say, and use the catchphrase, stop being mardy about it, Neil.
Right. Okay.
Anyway, on
And also anyone, the two reports we've just read out, anyone who has any thoughts about either of them, we'd love to see your thoughts in the comments.
definitely. So we have one last segment that is a very somber and sobering part of the show. No,
Or not.
or not. So for quite a while now, people have been, for those who this is the first time watching Hare in the Hawthorn, Neil drinks out of a very fine goblet on Hare in the Hawthorn.
Only the
Um,
best for me. Only the best for me.
only the best, pure silver. And people have been intrigued. Nobody's intrigued about what's in my cup. No, nobody's ever intrigued about what's in my cup, but everybody has been guessing what's in the Hare in the Hawthorn fairy goblet. And today is the day we're going to reveal this. We've left it far too long. Now, a few viewers did get this right. We've had some absolutely brilliant entries into this about what people think is in there. Some of them a little bit bizarre, which is always good. We like bizarre, but I'm going to hand you over to Neil because he's going to do the big reveal.
Yeah, well, this won't take long. Okay, it's it's no big deal, and we won't be able to joke and laugh about it in the future because it's done now, and I'm not likely to change what I drink.
I think
First
you
of all,
should. I think you should randomly go on. Show
yeah,
show said goblet.
So there's said goblet, 17th century, pure silver, which I should really just have in a cabinet on show. But well, I like to use it. You know,
Goblets should be used.
absolutely. It's not just there to sit to look at. So um, I enjoy very much enjoy drinking out of this goblet. It makes me feel very Byronic, you know. So I'm sitting here.
Ironic sounds
Uh,
so wrong. It sounds like you should be a cross between the what was it, the what was his name, the Bionic Man,
Not
and
bionic, not bionic,
I know,
Byronic.
but it's and then the last bit is, I forget it. Yeah, I
Yeah. You know what I
sorry.
mean. You know what I mean. For you know, I sit back in my large mansion in the
With
East
his
Wing,
smoking jacket on.
smoking jacket on, and drinking, imagining myself to be Lord Byron. But goblet aside, what am I drinking? Well, here we go. The final reveal. Proper
Proper job,
job,
Scrumpy.
Scrumpy from Greendale Farm. And again, Greendale Farm are not sponsoring us, although if anyone's watching from Greendale Farm and they do fancy sponsoring us, I have to recommend this, absolutely. 4.99 for 2 litres,
That's good.
which is pretty good value, and it's top quality stuff. I really like scrumpy, you know, proper cider. I developed the taste for it when I lived in Somerset. We're going back to Somerset and apples.
Exactly.
And I used to live for a few years in a tiny hamlet called Mudgley, which is just outside just outside Somerset, just outside Glastonbury. And it's, you know, there's about 20 houses. Mine was one at a tiny little cottage, and at the end of the dead end road in Mudgley is still Watkins Cider Farm. And you could go down, so the 100-meter walk for me from my house down to the cider farm. They'd have a little shop in there, and it's like walking back into the 1950s. These massive cider presses, you know, hand-turned cider presses, and they'd put into 3 different barrels, 3 different types of cider into the barrels, and you used to be able to go in and you'd get a half pint from each of the barrels for free to, you know, to taste, to try. And it's really strong stuff. And so by the time, you know, you had 1.5 pints in about 10 minutes, and you're reeling, and it's like, and you think, oh, it's not a very good business
Oh,
option.
it is. You come out
Oh,
with bags full.
it's a loss leader. They give
Yeah.
you that, and they know, and by the end of it, yeah, I have 20 litres of that. So
you
that's where I developed my taste for proper cider. And when you drink, you know, something like Strongbow or something, you realize that this isn't cider. This has got just chemicals dumped in it. And whereas if you go for something like from a proper farm, Greendale Farm, you know, I haven't ordered anything else from them. They do all sorts of stuff. They're based in Devon. And I also just love the way they called it proper job, as it, you know,
and
anyone
it's in
from
a milk bottle, which is
and
always
well,
classy.
yeah, no, that adds to it, in my opinion. It's that, yeah, but anyone from the West Country will know that proper job is something you say when
Yes, but
you
it's good.
approve of
Mm.
something. So there you go. And I hasten to add, I mean, this is a litre bottle, and I hasten to add that I don't sort of get through a litre while we're doing Hare and the Hawthorn. Otherwise, it'd be very interesting. But
We have talked in the past about doing the pissed pixies, doing a Hare in the Hawthorn, haven't we? Where we sit and just get increasingly drunk and just babble crap,
we have,
and
yeah.
see how that goes.
Yeah, it could be amusing. But
It could.
so the final thing I want to say is that although this is from Devon, obviously Devon, but you know, Somerset, Devon, Dorset all have fantastic sort of different types of scrumpy cider. But I did live in Somerset for many years, and I really miss it. I
Mm.
miss living in Somerset. I'm kind of in exile in Liverpool for various reasons, and whenever I pour a glass of scrumpy, just
Takes you back.
part of my mind goes back to living in, well, say somewhere like Mudgley, where I was quite happy in life. But you know, situations
So
change, and
where's proper job from? What farm is it again?
it's Greendale Farm.
Okay, so if anybody from Greendale Farm is listening and you've got a farmhouse that you want to rent out to Neil, I'm sure he'd be more than happy to
Yeah,
keep promoting your cider.
I can help crush your apples as well. You know, I'd be happy to do that. So
So
there
that
you go. That's the reveal.
that's the reveal, and it takes us back full circle to what we were talking about with the apple orchards,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
first fairy experience, which makes me kind of, I know it's probably a really stupid connection, or a late to the party connection, but apples being that sort of taboo fairy food, was that because of the fermentation
Possibly. Yeah, yeah,
of the
yeah.
apples?
I
Is
wouldn't,
is there
no,
is there that connection?
could be. Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't thought of that,
we
but
haven't
possibly.
done we haven't done a specific one on fairy food, so we'll put that down the list. There's lots of specifics that we haven't done that I think we ought to cover. If there's anything that you as viewers want, you as viewers, what is
Have you
going on
have
with
you been
my?
have you been drinking the scrumpy?
No, honestly, I literally I've been teetotal for a long time now. I've been giving it a break, and I think I ought to go back.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
If there's anything as views that you want to see as cover as a fairy topic, supernatural, otherworldly, or scare the pants off Neil with something paranormal, then we're more than happy to to chat about subjects that you suggest. If there's anybody you'd like to see on the show that we can get hold of, then we're more than happy for suggestions on that. We're always grateful for viewers, new and old, and your comments. It does mean a lot. It means that it feels like it's worth it. That it's not just me and
Yeah.
Neil chatting away.
Yeah, and the number of subscriptions is always growing, and so please, I know all podcasters say this at the end of the piece, but if you haven't subscribed, it really helps the channel if you can just press that subscription. It's really easy to do, and then click the bell if you want notifications every time we make a video.
Yep, and you can find us both on social media. Just look us up, and we do like hearing from people to some extent.
Yeah.
We do like hearing from people, and it's I often get messages of people that start off with, "I'm really sorry to bother you, but don't ever feel sorry. But if we block you, then it's because you're a raging nutter." So I'm going to say that off the bat. But there's nobody out there that watches us that are raving nutters.
Oh, what are you talking
Anyway, on that note, thank you very much, and we will be back very, very soon.
Cheers.
Cheers.